Welcome everybody in. It's another Nice Job live chat here on the NiceJob Podcast. How are you doing out there? I hope you're doing well. I hope 2021 is really starting to progress for you. If you're having a good day, keep it going with us. If you're having a bad day, let's see if we can turn things around right now for you with this chat here today. In particular, in this episode, we're talking kind of about digital marketing as a whole, but this one's really just to kind of get to know a little bit, someone that's out there in the digital marketing landscape, an expert for sure, a wealth of knowledge. We haven't had a chance to have too many conversations, but did a little research on our guest here. And he knows his stuff for sure. And come on the NiceJob Podcast, we're going to bring you people that we think can help you. All we ask, if you want to comment, you want to share, you want to rate it, that's all great. Just take something you learned today. That's all we ask. Take something you learned today and try it out. You don't have to commit to it for life. Just try it out. See if it'll help you in your business. See if it'll help you in your life. And hey, if it works out, that's great. If it doesn't, well, hey, that's part of the journey as well. We'll regroup. We'll reassess and we'll get on back there. And if you're joining us for the very first time, welcome. We are so excited to see some new visitors joining us week after week and some new listeners. And that makes us really excited because we're out here to try to help as many people as we can. So the more people are listening, we know we're closer to that goal. Let me actually get to my guest right now because it's not a show about me. Matthew Prepis, the Director of Business Development from SmartSites, joins me. And Matthew, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us here on the NiceJob Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've really been looking forward to this all week.
And we have as well, because we here at NiceJob, reputation marketing software, there's so much we do from one perspective, but we always love talking to other people within marketing because it's such a diverse field. There's so many different angles that you kind of can approach it in. But ultimately, the most successful businesses have systems in place for all kind of different elements. And you guys at SmartSites have a wealth of suite of services that you guys provide. Before we dive into that, I want to dive into you a bit. How did you get into marketing? Was it something that you kind of, as you worked your way through education, you found kind of a little bit of a passion for it? Was it, hey, I got a job and I found out I was pretty good and started grinding away at it? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, first, I thought it was pretty funny. I thought you were about to introduce like a surprise guest right in the beginning. I was like, whoa, I was not ready for that, but let's see what happens. But for me personally, I kind of fell into the position. I studied literature at Rutgers, as you might have seen from my bio, and actually started at SmartSites as a writer. So when I was looking for positions, I was looking for places where I can use my strengths, things like writing and editing. And when I joined SmartSites, I had actually little knowledge about digital marketing. And this was right around 10 years ago. And SEO, paid search were relatively new. Obviously, they've been around in some shape or form, but it still wasn't super mainstream like it is now. So when I landed the job at SmartSites, I was just super into what they were doing. I loved the company culture. I loved the services they were offering and what they were doing for their clients. And I basically told them, hey, I'll be the best writer you have. I'll kick ass here in this position. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse, but what I did was basically prove myself there, and they gave me opportunities to exceed and grow. So I went from a writer to an editor to actually managing editing, and then an opportunity joining the sales team where I was able to actually talk directly with clients instead of just doing work for the clients and learning more about what they do, what their goals are, how digital marketing might affect their businesses. And now 10 years later, I'm managing the sales team. I'm doing a lot of marketing strategy for the company. So it's something that I fell into, but something that I absolutely love and have been really studying over the past 10 years to give myself kind of an edge and give myself the best ability to talk to my clients.
And that's such a great perspective to have of kind of coming through it, finding opportunities, learning new skills along the way. Because oftentimes, and people dedicate themselves from the academic standpoint and they go to university and they're studying one specific field of marketing and they kind of dive into it. Sometimes upon graduation, there is a little disconnect where they don't quite have the real world understanding. And I know that sounds like such an old man sort of statement, like you don't know the world yet. But what I'm getting at is there's a lot that you're going to learn from the traditional sense, from traditional education, but it gets enhanced and it evolves as you go through experience, and sometimes bringing in a non-traditional look at things. Is there one thing that now, having a bunch of years in the business, that you're are either surprised that you kind of took to, or were a little bit intrigued by the fact of like, if you would have asked me 10 years ago that I would be passionate about this thing, I would have said no way, but here we are. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, so I think if you asked me maybe 10, 12 years ago when I was still in school, I probably would have seen myself right now being in some sort of education field, maybe teaching English or something like that. Where I landed is I still get to educate people just on a different way. Now I'm educating people on the importance of digital marketing and the different benefits between things like organic versus paid. So it's definitely a completely different field, but in some shape or form, I'm still giving that education, which I always kind of planned and hoped I would do.
Do you think it gives you a little bit of, I don't want to say an advantage, but the ability to kind of look at things perhaps from a different perspective, because it wasn't kind of drilled into you from the start, this academic sort of viewpoint?
It's a tough question, because I think digital marketing is something, at least now, that I guess is a little more mainstream, where there are, in fact, as I've learned recently, digital marketing courses. I've been interviewing a lot recently with new potential people for SmartSites. And some of them are saying, I got my digital marketing certificate at this university. I was like, I didn't know they offered that kind of thing. Or, even there was a course that you might take nowadays. So I think when I first started the workforce in marketing, it was kind of just hands-on, pretty scrappy, reading blogs. Now it's a little bit more digestible. There are certifications you can take to learn more about versus paid versus or organic, inbound versus outbound, and take like certifications, which probably never existed 10 years ago.
And last year, in 2020, everything that went on, I'm under the impression that the customer, the business owner, really the public at large, really took a step forward when it came to educational resources and really a technology understanding. I think the digital landscape is a little bit less scary now because some people were forced into it. I was saying, I was speaking earlier today that, my nieces and nephews that are under 10 and my parents that are over 60 know more about Zoom than I would have predicted anyone in those age ranges would have known of prior. What sort of challenges does that present, for professionals like yourself? Or is there more of an advantage that the audiences at large has become more technically savvy? Because prior, I feel like digital advertising, things like that, there was kind of a little bit, almost an unknown quality that perhaps made it a little bit easier to advertise. Whereas now people kind of have, the general public have their receptors up of what's crafted advertising, what's genuine, and all that sort of nature. So if everyone's evolved, if you subscribe to that, like I do, what are some of the challenges or some of the advantages that have come from the public taking a big step forward?
Yeah, so definitely a great point. Last year, businesses were kind of forced to turn or be a little bit more introspective about ways they could improve their business, separate from just being a brick and mortar presence. So a lot more people did start trying to learn about how to get their website more prominent or even to build their website. The challenges that I've seen are, one, a lot of new players have cropped up in the space. So, probably this time last year, there were 100 or 200 less digital marketing companies or website design companies. The other challenge is there's such a wide range, I'm sure same for your services, in terms of pricing and offers. And what we offer for, our services might be the same price as another company, but what they do might be totally different. Or explain to someone why our services cost a certain amount versus another company, which might be twice cheaper or whatever it may be. And I think the final thing there is someone who's searching for something like digital marketing. They could be someone looking to educate themselves and they just want to read blog posts and maybe update things on their website, write blog posts, write meta descriptions, or however technical you want to be. Or it might be a larger organization who want to actually find an agency like ourselves or like other agencies out there to have the work done for them. So these very broad keywords can mean something to two totally separate businesses and kind of like what they're ultimately looking for.
And the landscape hasn't just evolved, from the public perception. The digital landscape for professionals like ourselves are always kind of evolving, and you got to make sure that you're up on trends and you're up on, the latest changes with algorithms or perspective and things like that. Is there something that you would love to share with the audience, or you'd be willing to share with the audience of maybe a change or something that shifted, or maybe a myth that's gone on a bit too long, that you think, hey, you listen to NiceJob Podcast, here's a little gold nugget for you. What's the one thing that maybe people should start paying more attention to, or should make sure they have an understanding focus, or have hired someone to have an understanding of focus, that's maybe shifted over the last little bit that hasn't gotten big headlines?
Sure. So it's nothing new, but I'd say whether it's today or a year or 5 years ago, what I would really just tell people is to kind of look at the numbers. So Google Analytics, which is a free tool that's out there, lets you track your visitors to your website. It gives you a huge wealth of information about who they are, what they do, where they're coming from, what their income, gender, age is, and what time of the day they visit the website, what devices they're using. And it might seem overwhelming to look at this, but if you're able to kind of sit down and look for trends or look for things, look for patterns, you might notice that there's a certain time of day where your website performs better. There's a certain type of device where your website performs better, certain age, gender, and so on. And if you're able to take that information and use it properly, like, hey, I noticed that my conversion rate on mobile is horrendous. Why is that? Is it because my website is slow on mobile? Is it because the experience is bad on mobile? But I think the first step is just identifying either good things or bad things, and then you can try and figure out what to do with it. And on the flip side, hey, I noticed for whatever reason, Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., I get a ton of traffic, I get a ton of conversions. I don't know why, but if I can control anything, let me put my investment into those times where things are going really well and where I actually do see a lot of good things happening. So I'd say it's something that anyone could do if you could spend the time, or you can hire, a company to try and analyze the data for you and try and make those decisions for you.
And you touched on it a bit there, that the data that's out there is really going to help you figure out your audience, your targets. Ultimately, sometimes we see when people start their first foray into the digital landscape is they're thinking on such a global thing. They're almost thinking of competing with, perhaps, if you're in home services, the national competitor that's in your area, instead of perhaps the proper focus of focusing on the audience that's in your area. What are some of the pitfalls that perhaps business owners make when it comes to looking to nationally, not focus locally? And perhaps maybe a better way to phrase it is, why is it important to understand what's going to make the greatest impact locally and not get caught up, for example, of, hey, I don't have X amount of visitors to my site, I feel like I should have more because of how many people are in the world, versus maybe the metric you look at is like, all right, well, how many are you converting? How many are actually visiting with a purpose and then becoming something that you actually can use? Why is it so crucial to make sure you don't think too globally and really focus locally?
Yeah, that's a really good point and good question. I think a lot of customers feel self-defeated before they even start trying, because of, like what you said, hey, I offer this home service or whatever. There's a guy who's spending $1 million a month who competes nationally or globally. How could I ever compete with this person? But like you said, you don't really necessarily have to compete with that person. You just need to understand your audience, try and maybe dominate your particular area, and just focus on getting yourself more visitors, more calls, more forms. And if your main goal is to say, let me just do better than I did the month before, I think that's really enough to shoot for. You don't have to worry about competing with those large, either big box stores or these large national franchises or whatever you might call it.
I know every business and every situation is unique. So just talking kind of high level and wide view here. Is there a channel or a form of kind of local advertising that you think is potentially the best bang for your buck when it comes to the digital side of things?
Yeah, it's a challenging question. I think Google Ads makes advertising very readily available to anyone. However, it can be extremely difficult to manage on your own. And I feel like a lot of people listening might feel the same way. Hey, I've actually tried Google Ads in the past or Facebook ads in the past, and I just got really nothing from it. And the problem is, when you're trying to do it yourself, is you can easily fall into a lot of traps or pitfalls that these programs intentionally put there to make it so you spend your budget very easily and maybe you don't necessarily get the results you're hoping for. So with us who have done it, 500 times before or even more at this point, we know probably some of the best settings that will work right off the bat. And we know what keywords to go after, what keywords to avoid for mostly any campaign. And not to say that when we say this campaign is going to be perfect and it's going to be like the best performing thing ever, but we can at least save you a lot of money up front. And then we can start seeing what's happening once the campaigns are running. I think something that I like to talk about with some of my clients is like literally taking them to Google's website, the Google Ads website, and it says, get your campaign running in 5 steps. And it literally says, select your location, select your keywords, and select your budget and go. And it's literally that. It could be that easy, but if you do it that way, there's a good chance that you won't get much from it, even if you invest a lot of money.
So when you find your channel, you kind of find your platform and things like that. Is there anything in particular that you've noticed over your experience or the data tends to trend towards that like makes a good ad? It sounds like such a simple question, but ultimately I think people that don't, if they're so focused on their home business, they might get off put of like, oh, well, do I need a copyright or any of this, like of what thinking, but is there just some basic elements of like, hey, these are ads that if you at least start here, you're going to start building a successful campaign? Yeah.
So I think there's 2 things I can talk about with that. One, Google has a set of best practices, which they do give you pretty clear instruction on how to use them. A lot of people surprisingly don't, even though they tell you kind of how to run it and how to operate it. If you were to follow their letter to a T, there's a good chance you'll be more successful than like just leaving them blank. So for example, you can put multiple headlines. It's not mandatory to put multiple headlines, but if you do, your ad then becomes larger, becomes more eye-catching. And if you do nothing more than just that, your ad will still cost the same amount of money, but maybe you'll get more eyes because it's larger. The other thing I can say in terms of the actual ad copy itself is there are a lot of really cool tools out there, which essentially allow you to look at your competitors, see what they're spending per month on things like Google Ads, what keywords they're bidding on, what their ads look like. So if you're maybe not the most creative person, you can at least start with something like that to get a sense of maybe the terms to go after. Notice, hey, I noticed this company, they do similar services to me. They're spending a majority of their money on whatever this term or this service. I wonder why that is. And again, through kind of just some thoughtful analysis, you might make some good determinations of how you can spend your money or focus your ads.
I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that. We just recently had an episode with Caleb Winiger about perspective. And one of the things he talked about was kind of getting a little risk averse, but then also at times spending too much time looking at the competitors setup and not kind of focusing in. But it definitely is important to have, your finger on the pulse of what your competitors are doing. You talked about, when it comes with keyword competition and things of that. Is there a hierarchy of things you want to pay attention to when looking at competitors' data and perhaps some pitfalls that you want to avoid and not get too caught up with?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you could spend 5 hours doing competitor research. You could spend 50 hours doing competitor research. And at the end of the day, it's what do you do with it? I think it is important to spend some time there because, if they are indeed your true competitors, whether they're direct or indirect, even if there's one small nugget of information you can take from what they've done and use that for yourself or your own inspiration, I think it will have been worth the effort. I do agree that it might not make sense to get too heavily invested in try and figure out every minutia of what they're bidding on and what strategies they use and why, because at the end of the day, even if you run maybe the exact same campaign as they do, it might not be the same results. So you can't necessarily 100% rely on what you're seeing. And at a certain point, just got to launch and see what happens.
Is there a strategy that you tend to, I don't want to say like feel is the best, because again, and people know listening to the podcast, we try to give as much information as possible and understand, almost a disclaimer at the top, like, hey, every business is different. Like, that's also why we recommend like reach out to people at SmartSites, reach out to people at NiceJob, reach out to people of whoever you're going to get involved with it and like pick some expert brains. But is there any sort of strategy, rule of thumb or anything you want to say when it comes to trying to decide of when is it appropriate to approach a competitive keyword or competitive environment and when perhaps to get creative and try to go in another way. Is there kind of a mindset you can get? Again, every situation is going to be different, but something if someone's trying to evaluate, maybe they're talking and they want to evaluate who to hire. These are some key questions they could ask. But is there a mindset or a strategy when it comes to, okay, it's worth wading into something really competitive, or perhaps let's make some grounds in some other things and see if we can get some traction there?
Yeah, I think the hard thing about that question is you can't really control the competitiveness of your business unless you just decide to change your career field or what your company does. So no matter what, if let's say you're in the law field, it's going to be expensive to advertise. So in this case, I probably wouldn't recommend going after those keywords, which might cost $50 or $100 per click, and maybe try to find ones that either are specific to a certain location or a certain service that might be a little bit less expensive, but still at the end of the day might yield you the same end result. Also comes down to budget. Some people are willing to throw out tens of thousands of dollars into experimentation. Others have a $1,000 or $2,000 budget that is a lot of money for them because maybe it's coming out of their own pocket because they're the business owner and they want to make sure that every single dollar that they spend goes as far as it can. So in any case, we definitely want to try and understand, like, who are we making these ads for, who's the audience, and what's the best possible way to get the most bang for the buck for the customer. Because at the end of the day, they care about, mostly it's the results. They don't really care about the minutia of what keyword they're going after, as long as it ends up bringing them in, let's say, a call or a contact form.
Is there a certain channel or platform or type of advertising that might be most beneficial for those on the tighter budget? Because we've seen that a lot of, I don't have the money to spend for marketing. From the reputation marketing side of it, I don't want to say it's kind of an easy answer, but we're saying, hey, it's reputation. You go out there, you earn it. You're gonna be able to put that into high quality ads. You're gonna be able to put that into your recruiting. You're gonna solve a lot of problems just by making sure you have that foundation. That's why it's perfect that you could use SmartSites and use NiceJob together, because you're going to kind of feed it and make a nice big machine there. But if you're on the tighter budget, is there like, hey, is it focus on price per click? Is it focus on type of thing? Is there something that, okay, first step, let's maybe put some dollars into this?
Yeah, good question. I think for me, what I like to tell people, if they are at all concerned with hiring an agency to do a service like we offer, is to try it out yourself. Try with a smaller sample budget. I even send my clients sometimes like documentation or articles, or, hey, if you want to get certified in Google Ads and like learn all there is to it, and then create your own ad just to try it out and see how it looks. Like, I encourage you, I support you, please do it. And then I'll give you a call in a few months and we can kind of discuss what went well, what went wrong. Are you still in need of assistance there? Because what we do, whether it's SEO, even design or paid search, it really is something that anyone could do if they had unlimited time and resources. The reason people hire us to do it is because it's challenging, and if it's not managed properly, it can get expensive.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's a smart sort of situation to put yourself in, where you're able to hire someone that can help run it and help do it and monitor it, but make sure that you have enough information yourself to kind of always double check. You don't want to blindly hire an agency and not really have any baseline understanding, because then it's hard to evaluate. So with that being said, is there any resources that you would recommend? Ultimately, we do kind of prefer, or not prefer, but suggest, like, hey, if you're at the part where hiring an expert makes sense budgetarily, like, that's going to be great bang for your buck, because you now brought in experts to do something. But if someone's like, okay, I just want to get to the point where I can start talking to these experts and just kind of figure out if they're real, if they're BS, is there any resources out there that you would recommend to kind of start getting that education on?
Yeah, I mean, all the channels that we use pretty much every day, like Google or Facebook ads, if you look hard enough, they have tons and tons of resources. They have their own like certification platforms, and there are tons of blogs out there if you want to learn more about paid search or organic search. So a quick Googling can find you probably millions of articles about how to set up an awesome campaign, how to optimize your website for SEO, how to get started with website design. There's definitely probably some that are better than others, but there's no limit to the amount of resources you can find online.
And you mentioned already, a couple of those tools that you can kind of get started with absolutely for free. And, perhaps maybe on first glance, the data is not going to, set a lot of light bulbs off for you, but it does give you the ability to be exposed to that data. And, the great thing about data is you may not understand all the full, rationale that went into a change, but you usually can see a change, right? Like this number went up, this number went down, this increase, this decrease. Like I had more money in my pocket when this happened and I had less when that happened.
It's all ones and zeros.
Yeah. But that exposure, is great. And I think even, going back to the top of our discussion today, you came into where you are, a skill set in particular, a background. You've learned, you were exposed to data and you were kind of able to get some experiences and see a bit too. And I guess what that kind of preaches a bit, which I'm wondering if you agree, is sometimes a lot of these things, we're such a quick result society, but a couple of these things are going to take long-term investment. So I just wonder if you could speak a bit to like why it's important to make sure that you're kind of at the right stage to invest, but also why you gotta sometimes maybe wait a little bit for results or prepare for the long game.
Yeah. So in digital marketing, I feel like most people equate things like organic search engine optimization with longer term results, because with that sort of tactic, you're creating content, you're building links, you're making your website more authoritative, you're fixing technical errors, you're fixing your title tags and all that good stuff that Google looks for and likes. But if you do that for a month or two, it's probably not going to yield you too much results. Something you have to do continuously ongoing, and maybe 4 to 6 months down the line, you'll start seeing an uptick, which is exciting. With Google Ads, I feel like people equate it with instantaneous results, which to a point, yes, because you can start an ad next week and you can start getting clicks next week. That doesn't necessarily mean your ads will be successful, the first week you run it. So I think, like you mentioned, you do have to go into it knowing that, hey, I'm going to invest in this for a few months. I'm going to make clever changes, changes that I think are clever, and hope that things get better. There's a chance that things can be amazing right off the gate. But with any sort of advertising, I feel like you are collecting data and making changes based on that. So I would probably recommend with any sort of marketing service that you give it at least like 3 to 4 months before you make any rash decisions.
In the end, it's always a journey. And so I thank you for sharing your journey kind of through it and your knowledge. We've been ending every episode here in season 2 with the same question. And the premise is such as this is, we invite guests on because we feel like they have some expertise, but at the very least, they have that kind of expert quality within them. So the question we've been asking is, and feel free to take this in any direction that you would like. What is something that you don't know now, but you're either eager to find the answer to, or you're currently, working on and striving to get that answer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one thing that I would like to know more about personally, there's some interesting new services that have cropped up that use like artificial intelligence to create campaigns, create website, create content. It's something that to me, it just seems crazy. How can you trust a computer to generate these things that humans take hours and hours and hours to think out, to sketch out, to write, and to create? And now there's programs that can, make them for you. You might have seen things like AI creates a play, or an AI writes a love poem. And some of them end up turning out pretty wonky, and like they sound funny, but you're like, whoa, a computer wrote that? It kind of makes sense. So I'm really curious to see where that kind of stuff goes in the next few years.
And I can tell it's really close because you said you have the writing background. So there's that little over your shoulder, perhaps, maybe, of like, all right, maybe not get too good with the AI writing. Well, Matthew, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time coming on and your willingness. I know it's big for you guys as a company in SmartSites to kind of be, thought leaders and to be out there and to provide, as much for the audience as large as those that, are signed up and partnered with you for your services. If someone wants to either, hear more from you, get in touch with you, learn more about, what you're doing, where should we direct them towards?
Yeah, first, I just want to thank you for having me. It was been a lot of fun. I didn't know what to expect, but It was great being able to talk to you, and hopefully people enjoy our conversation. If anyone wants to reach out to me, they can shoot me an email. It's just my first name, matt@smartsites.com, or even matthew@smartsites.com goes to me. Or they can give us a call, 201-870-6000, and ask for me. But yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone that's interested in learning more about data or different services that we offer, or just challenges that they have. I'm happy to talk to anyone.
And if you're watching us on the live stream, we'll go back, we'll put it down in the comments, but if you're listening on the audio only version or watching on YouTube, in the episode description, you'll see the contact info that Matt said there. And if after we're done here, he wanted to change a little something, whatever's the most up-to-date contact information or where we direct you, you can find that in the episode description. Well, Matthew, thank you once again, and then hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon.
Yep. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And for all of you out there that have tuned in, we are so thankful that you are here. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And again, if you want to you want to comment, you want to share it to Facebook groups, things like that, we absolutely would enjoy that. But at the very least, we just hope that you got some great information or enjoy the conversation. At the end of the day, that's our goal here, is to provide some knowledge that hopefully you can take and make your own. We'll be back next Thursday with another Nice Job live chat here on the Nice Job Podcast. But as always, we want to implore you out there to be healthy, be safe, and don't forget to have a little fun out there as well. Take care, everybody.